And here we are, the final spooky video that will be unsettling enough to show people how twisted of a place Runeterra can be, but not twisted enough so we get demonetized. We are still family friendly here, and some champions don't exist to us. In this video, we will have a look at the most brutal stories and champions from League of Legends. Only two rules apply here. First, we will not mention champions we have already talked about in the previous videos. Otherwise, Singed would be here, because he was quite gory when it came to creating Warwick. And we will not mention any of the newest stories. This includes the new Veigar, Vladimir and Nocturne, because we will talk about them very soon. Also remember that when it comes to top lists, it is usually based on the opinions of the person who built the list. So while you might think the most brutal champion is Volibear, others may call for Footladis. What I'm trying to say is that all of this is just my opinion, and if you know other cool and brutal champions, feel free to tell me. So without further ado, let's get on it. Okay, you can come out now, but just for a bit. Don't make me lose money on this. Okay, you know what, you're still a bit too revealing. Let me fix that. There we go. Yes, for number one, we have to talk about Evelyn. Evelyn is a demon, and just like all the other demons, she enjoys fiddling with human emotions and feeding on their essence. The twist, however, is that Evelyn feeds on agony, hence her title, Agony's Embrace. The reason why I'm calling this a twist is because she needs to evoke agony in her prey herself. And there isn't a better way than to start with pleasure, and then when her chosen don't expect it, she would turn it into something much worse. At the very beginning, Evelyn was just a wisp of magic, and it took her many millennia before she learned how to dabble into the physical realm, let alone how to put on a physical form. And even after she managed to shape herself into something that looked like a semi-living being, she evoked horror for miles around. This forced her to learn how to shape herself into a human being, and she learned how to talk and act as a human being. More than that, in order to prey on human essence, she learned how to attract them, and she shaped her body into, well, what we know her as now. Over the many years of stalking her prey, she perfected the art of luring in humans, no matter what gender they are, before violently striking them down. Right now she roams around the western Valorant, where she seduces random people from bigger cities. Her story specifically showed us how she chooses her prey. People too drunk are usually not capable to lose themselves in pleasure. Anxious or depressed people already have weakened emotions. But those who are rich and satisfied with their lives are perfect targets. She can easily lure them in for some fun times. And right when they are at their peak, everything takes a dark turn. She takes on a twisted and dark appearance. She starts slashing and clawing to separate her prey's flesh. And she keeps this torture going until her target faints from fear, or their body gives up and they fall from physical exhaustion. In other words, she doesn't kill you quickly, but she slowly tortures you with cuts until your mind or body simply gives up. For number two, we'll have to move to Tokogol, an area between Freljord, Noxus and Demacia. This area is interesting for two reasons. First of all, there is a hidden void rift beneath the valley, but there is also a creature that uses this rift to pass over valuable information to the Watchers. As some of you might know, Velkoz serves as a messenger for the Watchers. He gathers information about Runeterra and its realm and passes it through the rift. By doing so, the Watchers can figure out how to destroy the physical realm. But the creepy part is how Velkoz gathers this information. He mainly has two tools at his disposal. His eye can disintegrate his targets and deconstruct them into small pieces of information. By doing this, he can learn about the molecular structure of life, how our brains work, why do they work, and most importantly, what's our weakness. This is one of the main reasons why those who meet Velkoz almost never survive, since his sight alone will wipe you away. But this isn't the only way he can gather information. There is also a second and far more brutal way of doing so. In one of Velkoz's stories, we learned about a group of warriors that investigated their own stronghold. That place was empty, everyone was gone, but it didn't seem like anyone attacked the stronghold. It was almost as if everyone peacefully left, with only a couple of burn marks left on the walls. Well, now we know that the burn marks are what remained from Velkoz's disintegration beam. But later the warriors finally found a couple of bodies laying face down on the ground. And when they turned them around, one of their eyes was staring up blankly. But the other eye was missing. There was only a black hole with a purple hue to it in their eye socket. Those victims definitely seemed alive, but they were absolutely brain dead. You see, instead of disintegrating the entire human body and gathering information about something he already knew, Velkoz can use his tentacle and jab it into your eye to learn what your brain knows. It's a far more effective way of gathering information, and a lot more brutal and horrifying at the same time. The void itself is known for evoking the worst in any living being, but the Shurimans were affected by it the most. That's why we have to put a Shuriman hero at number 3. As far as we can assume from all the information given, the Ascension was a Targonian invention. It seems like the aspects of Targon gave Shurimans the power to raise their own elite godlike army to fight against the void. And fight against the void they did. The Ascended proved an effective weapon against the horrors of the Abyss. But since the void is really good at twisting minds and evoking madness, eventually even the Ascended were touched by the greater darkness. And after the death of Azir, the majority of the Ascended fell into madness and turned into the Darkin. Originally that's who I wanted to put at number 3. The Darkin were after all very brutal and unforgiving warriors, especially after they learned how to use blood magic to shape their own bodies. But since we will talk about those more in the next video, which will feature a certain Hemo Mage, instead I want to talk about another seemingly peaceful but very brutal warrior, Nasus. At this point many of you may wonder, why is he talking about Nasus but not Renekton? Well, Renekton isn't really a surprise. We know he is a little bit mad at this point, and we know he is quick to lose control over his rage. But we also know about a couple of brutal things Nasus did, and those are the stories that you may not know about. Nasus, just like all the other Ascended, wields a massive weapon capable of cleaving many fragile beings with a single swing. And the story Fall of Icathia depicts exactly how effective of a weapon these giant blades can be. The Ascended are essentially giant lawnmowers, slashing through 5 or 10 people with every single swing, painting the battlefield with massive lines of crimson red. But in the Bloodline story, where we learned about Sivir's connection to Azir, we also learned that Nasus can quickly lose his nerve when dealing with fake heirs of the Shuriman throne. There is a scene where Nasus had to deal with 2 bodyguards. Unfortunately for one of them, his Wither ability is real, and Nasus turned one of them to dust. He can also summon sandstorms. But these are not just normal storms, these are quite brutal. The sand in these is moving so fast it burns away your skin and literally melts your flesh. The stories show soldiers that turned into red piles of bleeding meat. And when Nasus finally got to the fake successor of Azir, he simply tested his blood by pressing the man's face against a fake sun disk that was exposed to the boiling sun. So of course the man's face burnt like bacon and it got stuck to the disk, showing us that Nasus isn't really someone you'd want to upset. For number 4, we're getting back to the demons. We'll not talk about Nocturne because he's coming to the channel soon, and although quite brutal, we also will not talk about Fiddlesticks, despite him butchering people with his scythe-like pigs. Instead, we have to visit Tahm Kench. Just like Evelyn, Tahm Kench doesn't show his dark side until the very end, and then you will regret ever sealing a deal with him. Tahm Kench is an embodiment of gluttony. His hunger is never satisfied and his taste knows no limit. But while he physically eats a lot, in reality he feeds on misery. Tahm Kench is a demon that offers people really good deals that always have a catch that you would never expect. There's a story told by the Bilgewater narrator himself. It's a story where Tahm Kench gave him a single golden kraken, which he used to win in gambling. He was so successful he had enough to buy his own ship. But Tahm Kench tempted him that he could have much more than that. Why have a single ship when you can have an entire fleet? So the storyteller traveled with Tahm Kench from bar to bar, from den to den, always losing and winning massive sums of money. Until, along his way, the man forgot why he was even doing this, as he slowly lost everything he got. And he found himself in a place he had never been. For years he was friendless, homeless and poor. He was drinking from puddles and eating rats if he was lucky. The man called it being at a cliff, where Tahm Kench brought him, but he wasn't cowardly enough to jump and end it. But the temptation of misery was there, and at his lowest point in life, Tahm Kench appeared again and offered him another ride to fortune, trying to see if he sprays up for another dose of life's pain. In other stories, Tahm Kench may take the path to misery into his own hands, such as in the story from his teaser video. There Tahm Kench took a young man away from his gambling past, and to a brand new place where he could start a brand new life. In return, Tahm Kench asked for a good meal when the time comes. It sounded too easy a price, so the gambler agreed. So Tahm Kench took him into a village where he found himself a bride with a big and lovely family. And there the man was happier than ever. But when the wedding arrived, Tahm Kench emerged and he came for his part of the deal.
Please, not now, not this time. The bride did cry. The beast's response, to her it purred. This hunger's a burden, but it's the last time, I swear. So please, forgive. Now the creature's lies, so melodic and sincere, charmed that bride, and thus she failed to recognize when that demon's jaw unhinged. She screamed just once as I snapped her bones and crushed her limbs. Now that meal, it left me satisfied. So cry if you want, boy, 'cause you had a chance to walk away. Instead, you're the fool who let me in.
All of these were quite brutal and a little bit unsettling stories. But there is one champion with by far the highest body count which he had to deal with himself. And I'm not talking about Zerath magically twirling his wand to blow up a city with millions of people in it. I'm talking about a warlord king who crushed millions beneath his own mace, with his own hands, one by one, close and personal. Mordekaiser is by far the most brutal character that we know of in the world of League of Legends. Mordekaiser was a brutal warlord king from age before Noxus and Demacia, who kept his tyrannical reign over Eastern Valoran. He was a king, but he was also an unstoppable warrior. This combination always gave him control over the battlefields, and he slaughtered thousands of enemies himself in every war. He was so powerful, his territory slowly but surely consumed all other regions, until the rest of Valoran had no other option but to unite and kill the unstoppable warlord king. In other words, Mordekaiser was so powerful, everyone else had to work together in order to slay him. And when the day of the final battle arrived, or so the people thought, it wasn't a war, it was a genocide. The allied forces of Valoran sieged the Immortal Bastion, the capital city of Mordekaiser's empire. But even then, Mordekaiser advanced beyond his own walls and into the battlefield. His enemies kept running at him, but Mordekaiser slayed them all and their bodies only started piling beneath him. In the end, after many days of endless battle, Mordekaiser was finally beaten while standing on a mountain of corpses. The allied forces celebrated and everyone thought the tyrant was dead. But Mordekaiser had his own dark cult of warlocks in the Immortal Bastion, and using their dark magic, they were able to resurrect their king once again. In fact, Mordekaiser was practically immortal as long as his skeleton was whole and hidden in the Immortal Bastion. So every time he died in battle, the warlock simply brought him back, and the body count went higher. And every single one of Mordekaiser's death was pretty epic. One time it took 8 spearmen to stab him at the same time. Another time they tied Mordekaiser's body to horses and split him in half as he laughed. And oftentimes Mordekaiser simply died on top of even bigger and bigger mountains of corpses. It wasn't until the monks of the Blessed Isle sneaked into the capital and stole away Mordekaiser's skull. Only then was Mordekaiser dead for real. But then the Ruined King arrived, blew up the islands and revealed the skull to the world again. And all of that happened because Hecarim wanted the promotion. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.